All right, guys, we're back and we're live. I hope you guys can hear me. If not, go ahead and let us know in the chat. But just to reiterate, talking about effectively educating your audience. So if you've missed it, join me in this live presentation. Go ahead, scan that QR code or use access code 42131777 at mentee.com. Now, throughout the presentation, we see some good engagement already, some hearts. We have the cat, the Batman emojicon. Let's go ahead and use that as a reference. If I'm speaking too quickly, if I'm not enunciating clearly enough, go ahead and hit that button. Okay, I see we got 3 already. In that case, I'll slow it down, clarify a bit more for you guys. Now, at the end of the presentation, we will have a Q&A session. So don't hesitate to ask me any questions. We want to make sure you leave this session with all of your questions answered and no stone left unturned. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So regardless if you're in the classroom or in the boardroom, I want to hear from you guys. Where are you doing a majority of your educating? Are you a teacher? Or are you working for a company, working for another type of organization? Let's see here. Okay, cool. You see this fluctuating. We see a bit more popularity in the training and onboarding subject. Okay, 11% in the classroom. Great to see it. I see we have 9 people, 10 people engaging. So this is great. So throughout the presentation, I'm going to go through different question types and different strategies and tactics that you can apply to both of these settings. Really make sure that your audience, your team members, or your students are fully educated and understanding the subject matter. Really get the most out of these sessions here. So first and foremost, before I hosted this presentation, I had to look up a couple standardized ways that people typically educate their teams. So what I want you guys to do is go ahead and rank these statements in highest priority to lowest priority. Let me know. Effectively educating your team. Do we want to focus on encouraging teamwork and knowledge sharing? Providing informative resources, polls, surveys, and quizzes to gain feedback, and regulatory check-ins. Okay, I see this fluctuating a bit. A big emphasis on encouraging teamwork and knowledge sharing. So that's perfect to see, and that's exactly what Mentimeter allows you to do. Even just starting this presentation, I can see, okay, this is something we want to focus on, and can kind of see regulatory check-ins, maybe those one-on-ones are a bit on the lower scale here. So this is great to see. So it was my expectation that collaboration and knowledge sharing was going to really rank high on that scale. So when we talk about educating team members, making sure there's clarity, minimize any misunderstandings or communication, issues, whatever it may be, we really want to make sure that we're incentivizing participation and inclusivity. Now with Mentimeter, as you are part of the audience, I can really make sure your voice is being heard and I can focus on what really matters. So when we look at education, what we really want to do is boost knowledge sharing and inclusivity. We can all learn things from one another. We all perceive things differently, and clarity can come in a lot of different forms. So being able to have a tool like Mentimeter really allows us to have this engagement and this collaboration in a live setting. Once again, really amplifying, making the most out of these sessions. Now, if we move towards measuring audience participation and engagement, when you're giving a educating session, or you're teaching a class or hosting an onboarding session, you really want to make sure that the key areas of importance are being met. And of course, you want to make sure every person in that audience has the clarity that they need. And by including these engaging questions, these inclusivity questions, we can really make sure that questions are being answered, no stone is unturned, and that, like I said, you're getting the most out of the session and you're learning what needs to be learned. We also go ahead and add Q&A sessions, which we're going to be doing at the end of this presentation as well. So this really helps me evaluate, okay, was the subject matter in this presentation clear? Are you leaving this session with your questions being answered? Really allows me to use the most of this time and ensure it's valuable. And then lastly, when we look at providing valid references, making sure information is accessible for the team, not only do you have access to these presentations in a live setting, but Mentimeter can also be used offline, meaning that presentations don't necessarily have to be done at my pace. Let's say I gave a seminar to my students and I wanted to send out an engagement poll after my session. What I can actually do is send that out and then continue to get your insight, continue to get your engagement and perspective, and use that to evaluate that session and better prepare for the upcoming one. So this is really a great way to, once again, boost that collaboration and actually be able to share knowledge. And for those of you who are familiar with Mentimeter, you know that we have a wide variety of different question types. So regardless of what type of feedback or participation I specifically want to measure, I can input question types like the multiple choice that we saw earlier, word clouds, polls, quizzes, surveys, whatever it may be, to really gauge insight and use that feedback in a tangible and smart way. So in terms of education environments, we really have two standardized ways that we look at here: the synchronous environment and an asynchronous environment. Now, if we look at the knowledge sharing, if we look at a more communal setting, we want to go more into the synchronous. And that's essentially what we're doing right now. I'm presenting to you live, you are participating with the presentation, and we kind of have this togetherness, communal feeling here. But as I just mentioned, Mentimeter can be used both in a live setting, such as this, or in an offline setting, more at an audience pace. So if we go ahead and just summarize some of these points here: live engagement versus audience-paced presentations. Depending on your curriculum, on your onboarding phases, maybe you want to measure everything within the moment. You want to understand if the session is valuable, if the content is understood, and if your team can leave that session on the same page. Full expectation management ahead. They know what's important following that session. Now, if you're looking maybe more in the classroom and you want to give a seminar, and then potentially you want to quiz your students following that seminar to see, okay, was this clear? Can they answer these questions correctly? Did they truly understand the information presented? That's really where you can leverage that asynchronous, also known as audience-paced questions, to really gain feedback and, once again, evaluate whether or not that session was valuable and whether or not your students or your teammates understand the matter correctly. Now, in terms of synchronous versus asynchronous learning and making education easy, Mentimeter is accessible and compatible with all video conferencing tools. Now, if you're anything like us, the past 2 years, moving more towards this hybrid workspace, it's even harder to educate your team, keep students engaged, and really ensure alignment. So having something like Mentimeter that's fully web-based, and easily accessible via video conferencing platforms or just signing in using those access codes and QR codes, you can really ensure that you are continuously knowledge sharing, you're amplifying that collaboration and inclusivity, and you're making your resources available to your team. So if we kind of look back on those scaling questions that we just had, really ensuring that you do have that collaboration, those resources are being provided. You can survey your team, survey your students, and then if you need to, go into those one-on-ones and even use a mentee if you need. Now, if we look at tangible results that can actually be used, what you might notice is while I'm giving this presentation, you are engaging with me, you're answering questions, and what you can actually do is have those, audience insights and feedback be anonymous and also non-anonymous. And what I specifically notice when it comes to internal trainings, or maybe more importantly in a classroom setting, you can really make sure that if somebody is confused, if they need further clarification, that they feel incentivized to actually speak up and seek out more clarification, especially in a classroom setting, or even in onboarding. I'm sure we're all familiar with that one person who will raise their hand. They're always willing to speak up. They're always willing to ask questions, but not everybody is. So when we look at the overall education and the overall understanding of your teams and your classes, once again, you really want to make sure that you offer this opportunity to really make sure you have that transparency, and once again, make sure all voices are heard, really allowing you to, have a successful session for the entire team. Now, when we look at prioritization, we just saw that scaling question. And what's really great about that is that I was able to really focus on some of those key points, the knowledge sharing and the collaboration. Now, when it comes to recognizing what your audience needs, what your students need, you want to be able to accurately prioritize what needs to be focused on. Work in a smarter way, and of course, in a more scalable way to make sure that, again, all voices are being heard, all questions are being answered, and you're using these meetings and these onboarding sessions in the best way possible. So applying different types of questions really allows you to get that tangible, valuable feedback from your team. And then, like I said, apply that to upcoming presentations or evaluate the success of a prior presentation. So it really helps you structure your sessions, your seminars, your onboarding sessions, and can kind of help you measure the success of those phases. Okay, we're past phase 1 in the onboarding. We can now move on to phase 2, 3, and 4, because based on the feedback that I've gotten, based on the areas of improvement we needed to focus on, now we can say, we're good to go. I have the feedback that I need. And of course, with that, anonymous factor, you can ensure that it's likely genuine. Now, if we kind of look again at the evaluating specific sessions and seeing whether or not they were valuable to your team or not valuable, you can ask questions like this. And these are scaling questions, where of course, we can have multiple people come in and we can really see those scales kind of fluctuating in terms of, average consensus. A great thing here is, let's say, okay, we have 5 people, 6 people engaging with this question type and with these scales. What's great about it is you can go ahead and hover over these and see potential outliers. So, okay, good for any presenter to know. If you have one person who says this is not valuable, you can leave from this presentation and say, okay, what could I have done to make this more valuable? Did you learn new strategies? Let's see. Okay, it looks like a lot of people have, which is great to see, have that average of 3.9. And then, of course, continue to go through the scales and really measure the overall success of that session. And then once again, looking at this in real time, you'll see that these scales will fluctuate the more people that we actually have engaging with the presentation. Now, post-presentation, what I can really do is export all of the data collected within my live engaging presentation and then use it to evaluate. Okay, what specific slides, what specific areas did I see higher engagement? Where did people start to maybe drop off a bit more? So this is great to see here. Now, using Mentimeter is extremely easy to do. A lot of educators and a lot of internal procedures are already set in stone. And maybe if you're using something like PowerPoint or let's say a different presentation tool, it can be a bit intimidating to say, okay, let's move to a new tool, let's start using different engagement. However, with Mentimeter, as I mentioned, it's fully web-based, meaning anyone can access it from anywhere. So it's extremely easy to implement into your education, whether, like I said, it's in the classroom or if it's in the boardroom. Now, what we actually do to help you keep inspired and give you a variety of different procedures or different strategies to use, we have our template library. And you actually see here in this screenshot, we have purposes. First ones being education and training. So this is great. And what you can actually do, if you see here, just go ahead and add that template to your presentation directly. So you can include content slides, such as this. You can include any type of question type that you want. A question type that's fully anonymous, or a question type that may be, let's say, segmentation, or maybe you want your audience to actually identify themselves. So like I said, it really depends on what type of feedback you're looking to get and what success criteria you're looking to gain. But adding these to your presentations is extremely easy to do. And of course, you can find inspiration and continuously use different templates to amplify that education. Now, in terms of using this more cohesively internally and boosting that internal alignment, what you can actually do in more centralized subscriptions is actually share specified, customized templates across your team. An example of this could be if you work in the HR department and you want to measure understanding on safety regulations or resources for internal use. What you can actually do is create a template, share it across your HR team, and have different departments use that same presentation. And then in terms of internal alignment, you can work together, evaluate those sessions to say, okay, sales team, they are fully up to date, fully educated on safety and employee resources. Maybe if we look more at this department, looks like there's some areas that we could improve on. Let's focus on that. So it really helps you kind of be able to gain that feedback, like I said, ensure all voices are heard, and actually use these templates in a smart way by pre-creating resources for your team to use, not only for the audience, but to further educate your teams as well. So when I go into hosting classes and education from anywhere, I'm really focusing on the hybrid setting. So as I mentioned, Mentimeter is fully web-based. As we just saw in the prior slide, it's extremely easy to start using as well. So regardless if you're standing in front of a room full of people, or you're like me, standing in a studio presenting to people at home, you can of course ensure that you have that inclusivity, ensure questions are getting answered, measure the overall vibe, the satisfaction of the session, and really be able to give a meaningful presentation. And this is, of course, much more important when it comes to education. Now, compatible with video conference platforms like Zoom and MS Teams. In today's intro session, we did have somebody highlight the importance of integrations. So when we look at easy to use tools, Mentimeter is not only fully web-based, it's easily accessible, it's easily scalable, but it's fully compatible with these tools as well. So adding this to your educational courses or onto your onboarding sessions is extremely easy to do. And as mentioned, allows you to make the most out of those sessions and effectively educate your team. And when we look at the hybrid mentality, none of us are going to be a stranger to Zoom fatigue and digital burnout. Staring at a screen all day is tedious, to say the least. So being able to engage, learn by doing, asking meaningful questions, and actually participate in these sessions really, again, ensures, quick learning, smarter learning, and effective learning. So really make sure you keep people, tied into your session. And I can really ensure that by the interactions and by seeing, who's dropping off, who's still here, really being able to get that in a live setting. So we are now moving on to the live session, the live Q&A session. So what I want to do is just ask this last question before I go ahead and jump into answering your questions. I'm curious, what are your best tips for effectively educating your team? I know we kind of got this a bit more, we got this a bit earlier on with the ranking questions. I know knowledge sharing is going to be very important. Ensuring that there's informative resources available for your team, that's going to be very important. But let's see what else we have. Okay, using Mentee. Couldn't agree more. Definitely a very effective way to educate your team. Interactive exercises, sharing the results. Two-way communication, make it relevant and fun. Repetition and spacing, moderating questions. All great feedback here. And as you guys saw, this is something that Mentimeter will fully offer you. You get that engagement. You're able to share results, not only to your audience members, but to your teammates, to your fellow faculty members as well. You can make it fun by adding quizzes, sounds, polling, whatever it may be. Make it fun, keep it interesting, and keep your audience engaged. Multiple types of content, exactly. Now, as you guys saw as well, Mentimeter also offers the content slides, on top of the engagement slides. So, present the good content, ensure it's cohesive to your audience. And when we look at integrations and accessibility and how easy Mentimeter is to use, if your team is more used to using things like, let's say, PowerPoint, you can easily move PowerPoint presentations, boost that engagement by adding those, interactive exercises, amplifying that two-way communication between the audience and the presenter. This is great to see. So I think what we're going to do now, it's about time we jump into the live Q&A. So let's go ahead and see what questions we have here. I see we have 3 waiting to be answered. Are you able to moderate questions? Absolutely, yes, you are. What you can do is share moderation links. So if I'm giving live presentation, I can have somebody helping me on the behind the scenes setting, moderating questions. And what you can also do if you're a teacher, for example, is use a tool that we call Mentee Mode, where you can actually control the presentation from your phone while presenting. What this helps you do is ensure that relevant questions are being answered, can kind of help you avoid any topics that are, unrelated, off topic, maybe add a bit more confusion, really control the pace of your presentation. So this is a great question. And yes, of course, can absolutely moderate. Does Menti have a limit of how many students can join a presentation? I wonder if it would work for large audiences. Thank you, Rebecca. There is no actual limit for the size of your audience. So regardless if it's a team of 10 or a seminar of 1,000, Mentimeter is fully web-based, so really all you need is good connection. And it's really cool that you asked about large audiences, because what I want to go ahead and just show you, if we just backtrack for 1 second here, when we look at a bit more inspiration, you can actually check out here, it says audience size. So if you have a large session and you want to get loads of input from all of your audience members, you can go ahead and find inspiration for those larger audience sizes. Again, just inspiration to hopefully help ease you into Mentimeter in a better way. But in terms of limitation, the bigger the better, for sure. So no real limitation on the amount of students. Which ways can I measure results of the presentations? So what you can do is export results in the form of an Excel document or a PDF document. And what that allows you to do is actually leave the presentation, like I said, with tangible feedback. So rather than, stepping away from a presentation saying, yeah, it went good, we had a couple questions, you can use things like emojis, for example, open Q&A, various question types, whatever it may be, to one, ensure that all of your audience members are signing in, and then two, actually have something tangible. How did they answer this question? How did they respond to the scaling questions? Any open-ended questions, word clouds, multiple choices? So yeah, be able to export that, use that in a tangible way. All right, we've got 1 more minute here, I believe, you guys. So great presentation. Thank you so much for the feedback, creating a safe space for your students. That's what we like to see. Let's get those, quiet kids in the back raising their hands. Let's get them involved here. Is the first time I see Mentimeter in action. How difficult or hard is it to learn? It's extremely easy to learn. We have many, many help articles. We also have something called Mentee Academy, hosted by my colleague Oscar, where he can really show you how to take your presentations to the next level. And then, like we saw before, you have that inspiration. You have a lot of resources that will help educate you to use Mentimeter to its fullest extent. As a consumer, I'm interested in the comparative advantages of Mentimeter versus Slido, versus Poll Everywhere, versus similar tools. Where can I find such comparative information? This is a great question. And sure, of course, there's other engagement tools out there, but there's so much about Mentimeter and the capability of the tool that sets us apart. What I would highly recommend you do is reach out to our sales team at sales@mentimeter.com. Talk to one of our reps. We can explore your use case and ensure that Mentimeter will meet that need, and of course, potentially overperform any of our competitors. And of course, within that correspondence, we can really go into the specifics and how you're specifically looking to use Mentimeter. So this is a great question, and highly recommend you reach out to us so we can actually get that answered for you. Great question. We'd love to see that. Okay. Woo! Breath at the end of that long-winded session, you guys. Thank you so much for joining. I hope you got a lot of value from this session. And we have another one tomorrow at 10 o'clock to 10:20 with Oscar, so please join us there. Otherwise, I'll be back at 1:30 tomorrow for business cases. So thank you guys so much, and enjoy the rest of the conference. Bye.